My friends, what I have for you today is absolutely exclusive and tactically in-depth. It is the military and legal deployment of the doomsday weapon against the radical left, against the stateless globalists, and against transnational terrorism. Pay attention. For almost 3 decades, exactly 30 years of sepulchral silence, a secret court, a parallel structure, invisible to the average citizen, remained untouched in the shadows of the American Capitol. Close your eyes for a second and imagine the scene. A windowless room shielded against wiretapping where 5 high-ranking judges dressed in black, handpicked in total secrecy, review folders stamped by the CIA. There is no jury, no press, no activists shouting in the galleries. There is only the cold weight of the state's gavel. This is the Alien Terrorist Removal Court. A legal machine so lethal that no president has had the courage to use it. Not even Clinton, who signed its creation in 1996, nor Bush, nor Obama, nor Biden, none of them dared to press that red button. But this week the mask came off and the game changed irreversibly. Stay with me until the very last second of this video, because you will understand how this cudgel Donald Trump has just brandished will not only root out the internal enemies infiltrated in the United States. This invisible guillotine will suffocate the cash flow of organized crime and clear the way for saving Brazil's sovereignty in the 2026 elections. Will it really do all that? You'll only find out if you stay until the end. But first, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. And leave a like on the video because it takes a lot of work to make. Now, from 0 to 10, what's the probability that what Trump is doing in the United States will directly affect Brazil? Type it in the chat now from 0 to 10. To understand the magnitude of what's happening behind closed doors in the Oval Office, we need to apply the doctrine of infiltration. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Western world, intoxicated by an illusion of victory, believed that the totalitarian threat had been wiped off the map. It was the most fatal mistake of the century. The plan for domination didn't end. It just moved to a new phase. The Marxist revolution put down the rifle and took up the pen, the university lectern, and culture. The old KGB and the intellectuals from the Frankfurt School understood that direct confrontation was suicide. They replaced physical warfare with psychological warfare. The globalist and social democratic ideology took over. The role of a Trojan horse to bleed Western democracies from within. And why have the United States always been the main target? Because Americans serve as the great shield of freedom. The combination of economic power and the American military might is the only real barrier capable of preventing the collapse of our hemisphere into the hands of autocracies. And this is serious. If the United States falls from within, corroded by leftist subversion and moral destruction, Brazil instantly becomes the new Cuba, as we said in the previous video. Without the counterbalance of American democratic strength, Brazil does not have the ideological or military resilience to resist the coordinated pressure of the axis of resistance on its own. The globalist plan for Brazil has always been the same as the one designed for America: to implode the nation through the invasion of values, the destruction of borders, and the promotion of urban chaos. And to implode the shield, nations like Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba began to apply the parasite doctrine, as we also mentioned in the previous video. That's why it's important for you to watch all my videos. Like a virus that enters the host and shuts down its immune system, they injected radicals, saboteurs, and terrorists into democracies under the false, seductive, and untouchable guise of immigration and human rights activism. They used the West's tolerance as a lethal weapon to destroy the West itself, but they didn't count on Trump. That controversial figure, that coward, and time's up. Knowing that the globalist system would try to paralyze the government with endless lawsuits and empty congressional inquiries, the executive branch dug deep into its arsenal and activated the ATRC. The secret court has awakened. In practical terms, for you to understand, this means that the White House activated a perfectly legal special court for foreign terrorists, where the due process that protects criminals is stripped away and reduced to dust. Unlike the Alien Animals Act of 1978, which requires formal proof of a classic military invasion or declared war, the ATRC doesn't need enemy tanks crossing the border. All the Secretary of Internal Affairs needs to do is present the classified intelligence evidence to the 5 judges, proving that the foreigner is involved with terrorism, finances a risky organization, or spreads terror rhetoric. The administration had already made a brutal show of force with that old 1978 act recently. Trump invoked it to capture dozens of members of the bloody Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, which was spreading chaos in the country. And what was their fate? Summary deportation straight to the steel cells of the maximum security mega prison built by Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. In practical terms, American diplomacy started outsourcing hell for narco-terrorists. However, the use of this 1798 law required judicial proof that the country was suffering a literal invasion, which left room for debates in regular courts. And that's exactly why the TRC was activated now. It doesn't require a declaration of war or proof of invasion to act. If the government confirms the target's identity in secret, checkmate is automatic. Deportation is summary and immediate. The nonsense of endless appeals is over. The gravy train of lawyers funded by border NGOs delaying extraditions for 15 years is over. It's a surgical and lethal removal. The force of this reclaiming of sovereignty is already showing astonishing numbers. In the past year, relentless enforcement policies and the fear of extradition have forced the removal and departure of more than 3 million illegal immigrants from American territory. Of that impressive number, 2 million were self-deportations, where the illegal immigrants themselves asked to leave before the weight of the state came down on them. The system captured and summarily deported nearly 900,000 illegal immigrants, and apprehensions at the southern border dropped by 94% compared to the average during the disastrous Biden era. That means the American government saved $39 billion of taxpayers' money. Billions that would have been wasted on lengthy legal processes and supporting invaders are now protecting the nation. The open borders model is functionally dead. And to give you a precise surgical and mathematical sense of the strength of this new blockade, last June, official apprehensions at the border plummeted dramatically to exactly 9,848. It's the 14th consecutive month with a rate of 0 releases of illegals into the interior of the country. The catch and release policy of the Biden era is over. This means that the southern border of the United States has just reached its lowest level. The lowest level of crossings in more than 3 decades, going back to the distant year of 1992. But the most explosive revelation of this scenario is embedded in the official national security documents of 2026. The administration didn't activate this court just to hunt down extremists from the Middle East. Look at the level of what was documented. The White House has officially classified so-called radical left-wing terrorists, including anarchist groups and violent Marxist militias like Antifa, as targets of state security. American intelligence has detected what they call the Red-Green Alliance. It is the profane and dark union between the red revolutionary atheist far left and the green Islamic radicals who have joined forces in the streets of the West with a common goal: to overthrow capitalist democracy. And the crackdown extends directly to our continent. Aware that drug trafficking is the engine that finances terror, Trump ordered the reclassification of brutal Latin drug cartels and major transnational gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. This directly encompasses the backbone of the underworld that operates in Brazil. Narco-paramilitary factions like Comando Vermelho and Primero Comando da Capital are now treated by the United States with the same ferocity applied to Al-Qaeda. During the years of open borders, cartels and narco-terrorists killed just through the epidemic poisoning by fentanyl. More American citizens in 12 months than all United States soldiers killed in combat since 1945. A true war of extermination, covert and silent. And to put an end to this carnage, the Pentagon changed the rules of engagement. The formidable Operation Absolute Resolve proved this by capturing and dragging the Venezuelan narco-dictator Nicolas Maduro to face American justice. So, any front financier or member of Brazilian cartels who uses the Western financial system or tries to operate in the Americas will not face ordinary civil courts. They will be judged by the ATRC. Financially frozen and wiped from existence under anti-terrorism law. If you are part of the intellectual elite who sees this brutal chess game beyond the corporate media's smokescreen, you have a moral duty to act now. The establishment wants to ban our content because we tear away the veil of their systemic subversion. That's why I need you to take action in this fight. I'm running for the iBestie Award in the political influencer category. Your vote there is what proves the weight and the impenetrable strength of our elite analyst community against silencing. I'm asking for your vote now. The link is in the description and in the first pinned comment. There we are competing with communist journalists who abuse our democracy to defend the Ayatollah of Iran, to defend Maduro's dictatorship, to defend the siege that the powerful in Brasilia are waging against our freedom of speech. So now is the time more than ever to show our strength. I'm counting on you. Now, for you to understand the level of emergency we're living in, take a cold, hard look at the map of our own country today. Exactly a quarter of Brazilian territory, an immeasurable vastness of land that should be sovereign, has been silently swallowed up and today is controlled inch by organized crime. We allowed the creation of a paramilitary state within our own state, a terrorist country operating autonomously right here inside. Millions of honest citizens have been left to fend for themselves. They no longer live under the laws of the federal constitution. They are forced, at gunpoint, to obey the laws of the gang tribunals, the statutes of urban terrorists. It's the consolidation of modern slavery. The average Brazilian pays brutal taxes to support the bankrupt and bloated public machine. And when he returns home to his community, he is forced to pay the tax of fear to the local gang boss. The citizen pays a criminal toll on water, on gas cylinders, on internet access, on transportation, and even on the right to breathe. The people have been enslaved with the leniency and criminal complicity of the state because the state cowardly pretends to fight, but in practice retreats, negotiates, and gives up ground. The system is complicit. And it's exactly here that the brutal difference between free nations and captured nations is revealed. Look at our neighbors who signed the alliance and came under the shield of the Americas. If the current president of the Republic, Lula, had chosen to strengthen diplomatic and military ties with the United States instead of flirting with autocracies, the same tactical cleansing, the same financial and territorial strangulation that the ATRC weapon is carrying out there could be sweeping away crime here. The cutting-edge tracking satellite, the Department of Defense's data cross-referencing, and the formidable intelligence capabilities of the American government placed entirely at our disposal to crush and eradicate the factions. Understand the raw shock geopolitics. For the Pentagon, having Brazil pacified with an ironclad democracy, prosperous and purged of cartels, is not an act of charity. It is the absolute guarantee of the United States' own national security. They know that if Brazil is strong and clean, the entire hemisphere breathes in peace and the globalist axis suffocates. Time is running out, but the current leadership has deliberately dragged us onto the path to the abyss. Because out of all the nations that make up the Americas, only 3 countries will bizarrely choose to stay out of this protective shield, shutting the door on American intelligence. And Brazil, the second most powerful country on the continent and the most important pillar of Latin America, has been isolated by its own government. We turned our backs on the greatest security apparatus on earth to embrace chronically failed dictatorships. The final and painful result of this geopolitical betrayal is a people with their hands tied. A nation handcuffed, enslaved by the growing specter of inflation, suffocated daily by urban terrorist groups, and cornered by a rotten political system that hates its own people. To prove our power of mobilization to the algorithm and to confirm the insight behind this analysis, go down to the comments section now and type the verdict of our operation. Write the 2 non-negotiable keywords that confirm your understanding. weapon activated and shield on. I repeat, weapon activated and shield on. Type this now and take your position. Because the escalation of this domino effect will hit Brazil in a devastating way. By classifying factions like Comando Vermelho and IPCC as terrorists and activating the ATRC, Trump is not just clearing American territory. He is cutting the jugular artery of funding for the globalist left in Latin America. Transnational organized crime is not just a public security problem. It is the armed business partner and hidden financier of the São Paulo Forum. Chronically failed dictatorships like Cuba and Venezuela survive on the huge cash flow from drug trafficking to fund their destabilization operations on our borders. When the United States chokes off the cash flow and logistics of the factions under anti-terrorism law, the oxygen that fuels ideological corruption in neighboring countries instantly dries up. It's the financial strangulation of chaos, and this puts us on the edge of a historic abyss. The year 2026 will not be just another electoral contest in Brazil. It will be an existential referendum. Either Brazil aligns itself with the shield of the Americas, eradicating the doctrine of the parasite from our institutions, or we will be permanently consumed and devoured by a system that protects idolatry and crime. The final lesson of this geopolitical chess game is inviolable. The nation that does not control its own territory and loses control of its narrative inevitably becomes a hostage and a slave to its adversary. And the reality is that in your business, the law is exactly the same. Today, the most valuable currency is attention. And I am recruiting entrepreneurs and professionals who are the best at what they do but are invisible. What hurts the most is having a great business, great knowledge, and nobody knows you exist, while it seems like only dances or memes go viral. I used to think the same way. 15 years ago, on radio and television, I understood that building authority depends purely on content and a solid strategy. Now, the game is about media. Look at CIMED, look at Havan stores. One is a pharmaceutical company, the other is a department store. They tripled their sales the moment they understood they also needed to be a media company. The reality is that your identity can't be outsourced. The owner needs to put himself out there and set the vision. The days are over when you could just record with your phone any way you wanted with no authority and still make sales. Today, the digital world demands absolute professionalism. If you want to break through the bubble, be recognized, and build your empire by operating the exact machine I use to get 50 million views every month on social media, all monetized in dollars. I created a hands-on practical immersion. On August 16th, I will host this 100% in-person immersion face-to-face with me at my professional studio in Curitiba. It will be a practical and exclusive meeting. I will personally work with, guide, and direct you in building your authority so that your business and your knowledge stand out in a powerful way. QR code on the screen, link in the description, and in the first pinned comment. But pay attention, there are only 5 spots left. When the last one is taken, the steel door closes and then you'll have to wait. Click the link, I'll be waiting for you here. Now here's a golden gift for you. We created our channel with recommendations for shows and movies. No more wasting an hour of your life searching for titles in streaming catalogs only to end up with something terrible or some woke thing full of whining. No, 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 no. We have fantastic curation. Now you pick the title, sit on the couch, grab some popcorn, and enjoy with your family without worrying about wasting your time, okay? Link in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that'll appear in the video. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like the video. It takes a lot of work to make. It really takes work. Now, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.